Welcome back. We're here at topic 4 of module 1. In this one, we're going to talk about managing. What is it? How do you manage your program? What are the aspects that you need to focus on to manage your program, and the relationships in it? And how do you manage yourself and the risk that comes with being a coach? So we'll start off kind of by looking at just what are the things that you have to look at in terms of managing a program. And there's a awesome grid here on page 357 of your book that lays it out. And in this grid, you see you talk about policy management. What team policies? What are the policies and things that you enforce within your program? And then the information. What information are you looking at and collecting and storing appropriately to see where you've been down the road? And personnel, how do you handle your assistants? How do you handle, if you're an assistant, how do you handle working with your head coach? How do you handle working with other assistants? Are you a catalyst for your program to thrive, or are you limiting your program? Instructional management, we talked about that a little bit in the last topic, and just how you build your practices and your instruction time, and then your events. How do you handle game days? How do you handle travel? How do you handle all the aspects there? And that pours right into the logistics management. It goes from facilities to equipment to uniforms to all the fun budget items that we all lose hours of sleep over, and trying to figure out how are we going to do the best for our athletes, and knowing that most of the time we have limited budget and limited resources to be able to get more funds. And that goes right into our financial management. How do we properly stay within the means that our institutions have given us? And so this chapter here, chapter 18, it does a great job of talking about those things and incorporating those things. And we all love to coach, we do, but managing the program allows us the opportunity to coach. So it's important that we serve it faithfully and correctly, and handle it responsibly as Christian men and women. It's our duty to use the means that we're given appropriately, and within our programs it's the same way. And just like in our lives, if we don't do it well, we're held accountable. Well, within our programs, if we cannot handle the resources and the people and the things that God has given us effectively, then we probably aren't going to be employed very long. So this chapter does a great job of really narrowing some views, so it's clear and concise, and hopefully it allows you to think about some maybe areas that you can improve on in terms of your managing skills, and maybe some things that you haven't thought of, like, man, I haven't thought about that as an assistant. I need to make sure I'm handling myself appropriately, when the reality is that my head coach is going to be the one recommending me for a job, or man, maybe my assistant here is going to get an awesome job and I could go with them, or whatever the case may be. And not that that's the end-all be-all and everything, but it does play a role in this web of coaching, and coaching at the high school level. It means something. And how do you interact with opposing coaches, and how do you do those things? And you never know what those relationships and interactions can mean for you down the road, and it's important that we represent ourselves in the best light possible. Chapter 19 goes on to talk about managing our relationships a little bit more, and just in our current climate, we hear stories every year about a coach who gets fired because he doesn't handle his or her relationships with their athletes well, and puts themselves in bad situations. They end up costing them their job, and more often than not end up costing those individuals their career. And so how do we set up our boundaries with our athletes, and how do we define those, and and putting a plan in place to protect ourselves from that, while also still allowing ourselves to develop the trust and the cohesiveness that we need. It's a unique balance, and the high school level, they're depending on what school you're at, there's always more layers to it than at the college level, and so it's one of those things that first off, you need to know your institution's policy. Some schools have started to lay out guidelines for their coaches and interactions to help protect their coaches and also to protect the school from a legal aspect. So it's important for you to know those, and then also know, have a good common sense about how you interact. And the same can be said with colleagues, with other coaches on staff, and other people at the institution, to always be protecting yourselves. And I'll go back to, and you never know the implications that a positive relationship could have on your career. If coaching is something that you want to do long term, then those relationships are going to be the catalyst that drive you to that next job or drive you to that promotion where you're currently at. And then how we handle officials, how we handle those relationships, and it's a challenging one. It's one that I find myself conflicted in a lot. In a sport that's so based on human failure sometimes, and human error, with whether it be a strike zone or safe out call or whatever it may be. And I may have my opinion, and umpire's opinion is the one that counts, but at the same time, it's this challenge of, my players want to see me fight for them. That helps establish that trust. But how do I do that effectively? And so it's a constant battle, and just how do we handle those officials, and how do we handle those altercations? As coaches, all of our sports, we always have a moment in most games or matches where we are not happy with the officiating. And how do I react? How do I respond? How do I show my athletes that I am fighting for them in a positive way that represents who I am, represents the institution in a positive light, but still shows my athletes that I care and I'm fighting for them? And that's a unique balance, and it's different for each sport. There how things in basketball are viewed are different than maybe football or baseball or other sports. I joke around all the time, and I'm like, hey, basketball coaches, they get a warning. They get a technical and they get a warning. All right, time to cool down. Baseball, typically that's not, it's not how it goes. We get the old heave-ho real early, and so we've got to be, there's different ways to approach it depending on the sport that you're in, and so that's something to really think about. And the last chapter in this section, in this topic, is risk management, and this is an area that's growing and growing and growing, and I'm sure your institutions have a lot of the things that are covered in this chapter in terms of waivers and policies and insurance to help protect you as a coach. And they can be a headache getting your athletes to get them all in and get everything done, but ultimately these waivers and consent forms are built there to protect you in the event that anything were to happen to your athletes. Injury is a natural part of what we do, and our job is to make sure that we do the things necessary to prevent them by checking equipment and making sure everything's up to date. But injuries are still going to happen no matter how many safety blankets and safety nets that we put out there for our athletes. And so these consent waivers, these insurance forms, these physicals, they're all put in place to protect us. And as coaches, our livelihoods often depend on this, on our jobs. Our families depend on us having a solid job. And so they can be headaches getting all the athletes to get everything in, but they're for your benefit. And they're also something you want to pursue being an athletic director someday. These are the ones in Chapter 20 are great ones to look at and some great examples to look at. And as we continue to move forward into the coming years, I think we're only going to see more challenges that are brought up. you're seeing it right now all over the country right now with gender and how that's viewed within sport. And if you're thinking about being an athletic director, I really encourage you to start to follow these events, these questions that are taking place with transgender in sport, and just how it's affecting us, and what kind of policy do you want to have in place to protect yourself. And it's a challenge, and as a Christian, as a person of faith, it becomes even a thicker issue than it is for people who don't have faith. And we're called to love and to be Christ to those around us, and it's a sticky one that is tough. It's a tough answer, and is there a right answer? I don't know. All I know is that we're called so much to love, and that's just an example, and I don't want to spend too much time on that. As I finish up kind of this video here for topic number 4, what I want to leave you with is that, as you get through this, it is so important for us to be able to manage our programs effectively, to build our relationships, and to understand that we also at the same time have to protect ourselves and our institutions and the way we do things from any kind of incident that could occur. And that's our responsibility, and that's God put us in these roles, and it's our job to serve them faithfully. And I think these 3 chapters really will lay out the groundwork for you to be able to do that. Next time we meet, we'll move on to Module 2. Your assignments will be posted, and as always, if you need anything, let me know.